to start the recording now. We will circulate a copy of the recording and the slides by email next week. We are also going to add in a copy of the slides to the chat now, as we know that some people like to have them open and go through them as the session is happening. I'm not expecting any fire alarms where I am, but please do keep an ear out for this where you are. This is a safe space, so we do ask that you respect one another on this session. You can add any comments and reflections around the things that you hear today into the chat, but we do ask that you add any questions into the Q&A using the Q&A function. This just enables us to find the questions really easily and that they don't get lost in the chat. We have also enabled it so you can upvote any questions, and we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. We're aiming to have around 20 minutes for questions. Whilst we do encourage you to submit questions using the Q&A function, if you do need to ask your question verbally, you can raise your virtual hand in the last part of the session. But again, please do wait till we get to the Q&A part of the session to do that. Next slide, please. So just to set the scene a little bit, fundraising is one of the biggest and most persistent challenges facing charities, and it's getting harder. There's rising costs, there's greater competition for grants, and shifting donor behaviour are all making it more difficult for us to raise funds consistently. And for smaller organisations, the challenge is even sharper. So a recent CAF survey found that around 60% of small charities rely on just one or two income streams, which is very often trusts or grant funding, and that creates real vulnerability. If a major grant ends or your appeal falls short, it can leave us with a serious gap in our funding. And from our own data, we know that many charities have seen income plateau or decline over the last year, but the demand for your services is continuing to rise. Fundraising, in short, is under strain. And often it's being done without dedicated support. So for many small charities, fundraising is being squeezed in alongside many other things. It might be carried out by you as chief exec, or by you as a trustee, or your overstretched staff who are already spinning multiple plates. And that's why having a clear and focused fundraising strategy is so important. It's not about writing pages and pages of theory, it's about giving yourself a roadmap. A good strategy helps you decide where to put your energy, how to use your resources, and what to say no to. It gives you a way to build long-term sustainability rather than just reacting to immediate need. Now, just to remind you and manage expectations, this session is not going to be a step-by-step guide to writing a fundraising strategy. What we are sharing today is some of our top tips, some of the lessons that we've learned along the way, and practical insight to help you shape a more effective strategy, whether you're starting from scratch or you're revisiting what you already have. We do know that some of you might want more in-depth support on how to actually write a strategy. So just to flag, we have launched a new half-day training specifically for small charities that's in late August, and that's available on our website now. And looking a little bit further ahead, we're also developing a one-day course for those who already have a basic approach in place, but want to go that little bit further, particularly around building a more diverse and resilient fundraising strategy. So there'll be more support coming, whatever stage you're at, so please keep an eye on the website for further details. Next slide, please. So just to introduce myself, I'm Frankie, and I'll be chairing today's session on behalf of NCVO. I'm also joined in the background by my colleagues Holly, Josie, and Chanel, who are helping behind the scenes with things like sharing slides, running the polls, and just keeping an eye on the chat and Q&A. We're just going to have a quick look at how the session's going to run this morning. So we're nearly through the welcome and housekeeping, and then I'll hand over to the people that you're really here to hear from. So we've got our speakers, Rob Cope from the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, Anne Hughes, trustee and third sector consultant, and Caroline Coates, CEO of Harry's Hat. And they're going to be sharing their top tips and practical insights to help you build more effective fundraising strategies. At around 11:30, we'll open the floor for Q&A. So feel free to drop the questions into the Q&A function at any time, and we will try and cover as many as we can. We may not get through all of them, but we will get through as many as we can in that time. And then just before 12 o'clock, we'll wrap up with some signposting to further support and resources, including training opportunities we've got coming up later this summer. So that's the plan. and we're really pleased to have you here with us. Next slide, please. So very briefly, for anyone who is unfamiliar with us, NCVO is the largest network for charities and volunteering. We're proud to represent and support over 17,000 voluntary organisations of all sizes, from the biggest household name charities to the smallest community groups. Our members range from big medical research charities to the local amateur sports clubs. At their heart, they all have the aim of making the world around them a better place, and we would love for you to join us. Next slide, please. So by becoming a member of NCVO, you can save time and money. As a member, you get access to information and guidance, downloadable tools and templates, discounted training, the sector's most encompassing research, and much, much more. Only members have complete access to everything we offer, and if you're a small charity with income under 30,000, membership is free. And if your organisation has an annual income between 30,000 and 500,000, we're offering 50% off NCVO membership to new members between the 23rd of July and 31st of July. So just use the code SCW50 when you apply to claim the discount, and full details are available on our website. Next slide, please. Before we get properly started, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the sponsors of Small Charity Week, Utility Aid. So Utility Aid is the UK's largest energy broker for the voluntary sector. They work with over 4,500 organisations and counting, and they're passionate about helping charities cut energy costs so more of your money goes directly into your services. They can support you with energy switching, account management, your journey to net zero, and carbon reporting. So far this year, they've retrieved over 651,000 for their customers who were overspending on their energy bills. This includes over 38,000 just for NCVO members. If you'd like to find out more about how they can help your organisation, just get in touch using the email address on this slide. And a big thank you once again to Utility Aid for supporting Small Charity Week. Next slide, please. So before we get into the main content, we'd love just to get a sense of where everyone's at with their fundraising strategy. So we're going to run a quick poll. In a minute, you'll see 4 options on your screen, which are: you don't currently have a strategy, you don't have one yet, but you're planning to develop one, you do have a strategy, but it's not really being used, or you have one and are actively referring to it. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a really useful way for us to see the range of experience. So if you go ahead and just pick the closest one to your situation. So really interesting to see, and really good to see that, well, I say good, that no, but you're looking to do it soon. So you are definitely on the right session to help you with that. For those of you that's put it in a drawer, let's try and encourage you to get it out of that drawer and make this document something that you're really going to use. So I'll just introduce you now to one of our speakers. So I'm really pleased to hand over to someone who knows this stuff inside and out. Caroline is the CEO of Harry's Hat, a charity that makes a real difference for families affected by hydrocephalus. I hope I've pronounced that right, Caroline. She's going to share her top 3 tips based on her lived experience of running a small but mighty organisation, juggling priorities and building a fundraising approach that stays true to its purpose. Over to you, Caroline.
Hello, thank you for having me. As Frankie said, I'm Caroline. I'm the CEO of Harry's Hydrocephalus Awareness Trust. But most importantly, I'm Harry's mum. So we're very much a lived experience organisation, and we support all families who are experiencing paediatric hydrocephalus, which is known as water on the brain. In terms of fundraising strategy, I've got some sort of hints and tips. So if I can have the next slide, please. So the first thing I would say, and it is really cliched, but the SWOT analysis is key, and that's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But when you're looking at this, really think about your organisation and who it touches, and how do these people fit into your SWOT analysis? Think about the environment that you're operating in, and who are your friends, who are your frenemies, and who could open doors to your organisation, and think about why this matters, how they could open doors, and what could they do. And one of the things I think we've learned is a key to our organisation and so many other organisations are actually the people that we're there to support. But what we find is that very often these people are the very last people to be asked to get involved. And as a charity, are we making sure there's opportunities for the people that we support to get involved in all aspects of our fundraising? And when we look at our fundraising offer, and this is really important, and it's something we've learned as well, is everything that we're offering suitable for the very people that we're there to support? If you look at your fundraising offer, is there things that everybody who's benefiting from your charity can actually actively engage in? And like us, if you're a nationwide charity, is this across the UK, or are you only focusing on a few key events? And make sure that the offer you've got reflects the people that you're there to support. Next slide, please. Really understand the difference that you're here to make. And it sounds really simple, but we are so engrossed in the sort of day-to-day struggle of why we're here that we're forgetting our reason why. And make sure that is at the heart of your strategy. Why do you need this money? Why should you have it over anybody else? Ask your team. It's quite an interesting one. Different members of your team, what are you actually here to do, and what difference do we make? Because it's really, really good exercise to do to ensure that you're all on the same page, or you might find that members of your team have a little bit of a different takeaway. And then imagine, which is probably not great at the moment, but imagine that your charity was zapped away and overnight it just wasn't there anymore. Does that really matter? And what difference would that have for the people that you are there to support? And if it matters, why does it matter? Because at the heart of your strategy is your why. If you don't understand your why, you can't make a good ask. Next slide, please. Keep your strategy concise and actionable. Otherwise, it really does sit in the drawer and it doesn't do very much. So your fundraising strategy and your marketing strategy and your comms, for that matter, should all go back to your why, and your why should be in your business plan. So why are we here, and how are we going to achieve it, and how is the money that we're going to raise enable this? And this comes very much back to when you're setting fundraising targets. I've been a fundraiser for a very long time, which makes me feel really old now. But when I first started out, there was very much, and we still look at it, bring in a fundraiser, how much can they make on the return on investment? But that's just targets for target's sake. If you're setting a fundraising target, be really clear about what you're actually going to do with this money. Otherwise, you're just setting a target on top of somebody's head that isn't meaningful. And when you're then trying to show that to a funder, they need to understand, if we give you this money, this is the change that it's going to enable, not that we're just sticking 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the person's salary or time, whatever, just for a figure's sake. It's all got to come back to your business plan and why you need the money and the change that money is going to deliver. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Next slide, please. So next up, we were due to hear from Jordan Miller-Hughes, but unfortunately he was unable to make the webinar. So we're really grateful to Anne Hughes for stepping in at the last minute. Anne is a trustee for Children's First, a third sector consultant, and an experienced fundraiser with a wealth of knowledge across the many different areas of fundraising. She's going to share her top tips with us, drawing on her experiences from across the sector. Over to you, Anne.
Sorry, I just thought I would be unmuted magically there. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Hughes. As Frankie has just said, I actually celebrated my 27th anniversary of being a fundraiser 2 days ago. So I entered the sector back in the 90s when I have to say it was very, very different. I became a freelance, a consultant within the sector 7 years ago, just 7.5 years almost ago. And now I do a variety of work. I'm very proud to work a lot closely with the Chartered Institute of Fundraising quite often. And I also do interim leadership in coaching with teams and mentoring and training fundraisers. So yeah, I've got a wealth of experience, and also because this is Small Charities Week, currently 2 days a week, I am the interim director, so the leader of a small charity. And over the last couple of years that I've been there, we're now looking for somebody to take on the substantive role, but we've managed to double their income. And I think I've done that not as a fundraiser, as a leader, because it had to be done. So I very much understand where you all sit through a variety of different roles that I play just now. So if you want to go to the first slide, that would be great. Thanks, Josie. Yes. So, I mean, really carrying on from some of the things that Caroline has just outlined for us, the aligning your fundraising with your organisational strategy is so super important, that you have to ensure that the strategy sits under. So I've had organisations come to me before and ask me to write a fundraising strategy. And I've said to them, so show me your organisational strategy. And they've said, we don't have one. And I've been like, well, I can't write a fundraising strategy because I don't understand what I'm writing it for. Why, what are the aims? Why do we need money? Because that is essential. So ensure that you've got a good, strong organisational strategy. As you will know, this is a role for the board usually. I know that really crosses over a lot, and I really appreciate that. So make sure that there is a strategy, and if your board aren't involved in that strategy, then I think you have to impress upon them how important it is that you have a good, strong strategy that sets the purpose of the organisation. Something else that, again, I think echoes what Caroline has already said is that storytelling. I think this is really important in the number of organisations who I know, just because I've been in the same space as them, that are doing amazing work, but they never tell the story. And I really appreciate that for small charities, you're at the coalface all the time, and perhaps doing, 100% doing the work is more important than telling the story of the work, because you're very passionate about what it is that you're doing. But we need to understand why you're doing that. You need to be good at telling the story. And that is so important. And within teams, when I've done work within fundraising teams, it's speaking to our service colleagues, the ones that are doing the service, to actually say, can you tell us the anecdotes? Can you tell us what's going on out in the world? Because not only does that quite honestly motivate a fundraiser, but it's going to motivate the people that we are speaking to. And so it's really important that either you get good at telling the story. I mean, I think AI would probably tell the story for you now, but that you get good at telling the story, or you find someone. And that, to be quite honest, doesn't need to be a fundraiser. That can be anybody within the organisation. Ensure that you're getting good case studies, that you've got good real life quotes that you can put. And this is the kind of things that funders love to see. And so make sure you're gathering this information as you go, because if you wait until you need it, you're probably too late, because then you'll need to think back to what was some of the amazing things that we did in the last year, for example, and that's too late. It's much better to get into the practice of saving the stories as you go. What I've already said, if we don't understand why we're fundraising, then why would anyone else? And in order to be really, as a fundraiser, I would say it's equal parts, and I say this so often, that it's equal parts, for me, passion about the cause and humility. So that I'm saying to the funder, I am so passionate about this. I'm trying to get you bought into the passion I've got about this, but the humility to say, and if you don't help us, we can't do that. Not in those words, obviously, but to have really be expressing that always. And so, so it's really important that everyone within the organisation, I think, understands why we are here. So if you could go to the next slide. That would be great. Yes, and that is just brought myself on beautifully there. Everyone in your organisation has to have an understanding of the status of the charity and what your funding structure is, and this is essential. I have done work sometimes in like a national Scottish charity a few years ago, and they had resource centres, I think about 38 resource centres across Scotland for people that were, service users of the organisation. Within those resource centres, commonly, the staff team would be fundraising for other charities. Literally, they would be fundraising for something that was going on in the community. And for me, the fundamental problem there was that because they don't, when I join a charity, I know it's a charity because I'm a fundraiser or I'm a leader, but they join as a service provider, or, in those resource centres, maybe a therapist or a receptionist or whatever. And they didn't realise that we were a charity. I think the people in the organisation, they were a big employer, so they had like 400 or 500 staff. But the people in the organisation didn't even understand that they were a charity, and so they were fundraising for others. Now, that was a fundamental problem for me as a fundraiser, trying to encourage my community fundraisers to raise more money. But it was a huge problem for the whole culture of the organisation, I would say, that everybody didn't understand their charity status and the funding structure. So ensure that everyone in your organisation, including the people using your organisation, understand, because I think so commonly people think you provide a service and that you're maybe the government, or you're maybe the council, and they think that they're just getting the service that they're entitled to, which 100% they are, but they don't understand that you rely on donated money in order to run the service. So you really need to, if you've not got that just now, start to shift the messaging to ensure, and I'm not saying that you necessarily ask everyone that uses your services to donate money, because that wouldn't always be appropriate, but make sure that they understand. Because what we commonly had in those resource centres for that organisation was that people were fundraising for other charities or somebody else, and quite frankly, the other charity was better at asking for money and doing it in the right way to get people to do it. So it's so important that you think about, how do we show ourselves out in the world, and how do we ask the right people the right question at the right time in order for them to give us some money. And everyone has to take a responsibility for that in the team. What else have I got there? Yeah, I think it's really important that you engage them, that you influence them, and that you equip them with the knowledge. They're not going to know this if you don't tell them, because none of us know anything if people don't tell them. So I think it's really, really important that you are very aware of the fact that that you speak to everybody about what it is, the work you're doing, and the impact. Again, impact, the more you can measure impact, the better it will be for the stories that you tell when you're speaking in a fundraising sense. And I think really staying in the conversation with stakeholders, this isn't something that I think that I recommend you all do next week or next month and then it's done. This is something that has to be ongoing message, that you're with everyone that uses your organisation, whether that is the supplier of your toilet roll, or it is the supplier of your printer, or it is the people that use your service. Ensure that they are all stakeholders. Any one of them could win the Euro Millions. It's important that they understand that you are a charity in need of public funding. And if we could flick to the next slide, it would be great. Yeah, so I think given the different size of small charity you are, I don't know how you'll all have boards. I don't know how big the structure of internally would be if you've got senior management teams. I didn't want to change the headings on Jordan's slides, so I left the headings the same. I think there's something really important about getting to know your board of trustees and ensuring that they really understand the depth of the work and understand the impact they can have. I'm doing some work just now with some of the NHS charities that are trying to move into unrestricted funding, and that's something. It's like even getting the board of trustees to share something on LinkedIn could be really valuable. But also think like, and I speak as a trustee, like my network can be the network of the organisation. I was at a board meeting all day yesterday with Children First through in Edinburgh, and there was a few things that came up conversation that I then spoke to the team about and said, right, so I can make an introduction there. I can actually get that information that you're trying to find from that local authority within Scotland because of other work I'm doing. And so it's really important that you see that it's all about building the network of the organisation, because we don't know who within that network will be able to help you access funding. So do they understand fundraisers? I have been, so Children First, which was previously the Royal, I'm going to forget, Institute of I'm forgetting, the RSPCC, I think, within Scotland. So I, 140 years old we are this year. I am the first fundraiser to ever sit on the board. I've been there for 6 years, but I am the only fundraiser that has ever sat on the board. I think that's work that, I've spoke about with CIOF, and they're very aware of. How do we encourage fundraisers to join boards? I think something more important about, have you got a fundraiser on your board, is, do you have someone on your board who understands investments? Because realistically, I do believe that all charities are fundraising organisations with a purpose. Let's put it the other way around. That's what charities are. They all have to fundraise, and they've got a really strong purpose. And what we need them to understand is that if we invest in fundraising in some way, whatever way you decide to do that, in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, our income will have grown substantially in the way that we want it to go. So fundraising isn't a cost, which I think sometimes boards can think it's a cost, and organisations can think the cost of fundraising. Fundraising is an investment. It's an investment in your organisation to say, if we make this investment now, we will know that that is going to set us up much stronger for the future. And so I think getting somebody on your board, if you can't get a fundraiser, then get somebody on your board who understands investment, because that is essentially what fundraising is. It is an investment in your organisation. And I think understanding, and I'm sure some of you will perhaps resonate with some of it, when trustees or people come to you and they think that fundraising is easier, and have you thought about doing a dog walk? Have you thought about doing a fair? And things like this very naive opinion that people have about what fundraising is. And actually, I had somebody say to me, who I'm trying to train in another organisation recently, well, I don't know how much I'll raise because fundraising is finger in the air. And I was like, well, no, it's really, really not. As a professional fundraiser for 27 years, it's never a finger in the air. I know what I need to do to raise the amount of money that you need me to raise. Can I always do it? I would hope so with all the experience I've got, but it's not a finger in the air. Fundraising is a professional career, as CIOF will tell us, as a professional career, and we do actually really know how to go about raising money. And so there we can take the guesswork, we can take the risk out of that for you. So again, it's understanding that fundraising is an investment in your organisation. And obviously, being a polite fundraiser, I always take everybody's feedback about what I should do to raise money and say, oh, that's a really good idea, because I don't want to put them off. But most of the ideas that people give me aren't what I'm going to necessarily do. So it's the getting them to understand that we're not going to change this organisation by doing a sponsored walk or doing a coffee morning. That isn't going to be what's going to increase our funds. It's going to be something so much more than that, which is again why we need to ensure that we've got somebody who understands fundraising around about us. And I will caveat, because I mentor a lot of fundraisers and encourage them to join boards, I want to caveat, getting a fundraiser involved in your board doesn't mean that you're getting a free fundraiser. It means you're getting somebody that can advise you. And so I would hugely encourage you to get fundraisers on your board, but don't think that they're coming to set a target and raise all the money for you, because that actually isn't why they're there. That isn't governance. That's free work. So I would say that. And I think that the thing, and I was speaking to someone about some fundraising before I come on this, that sometimes the number one ask shouldn't necessarily be for money, because networks can sometimes be so much more influential and profitable in the longer term. Previously, before I became freelance, and I worked at an organisation for maybe 3.5, 4 years, and one of the contacts that we had there, one of the supporters we had there, had he given? Yes, he'd maybe given over the period 10 or 15,000. But when I actually started to map where our money and our support had come from, he had been responsible for over £250,000 coming into that organisation because of the introductions he made, because of the people he knew, because I made sure I was telling him the stories of the organisation, so his passion got deeper and he was more bought into what it was we do. And therefore, for me, if I can get, and he's, quite a well-known businessman in Glasgow where I am, if I could get him involved in an organisation, it wouldn't be about what he's going to contribute to the organisation. It is far, far more important who he will get round the table with me. So understand the difference of that when you're speaking to your supporters. If you know somebody who knows everybody, this guy pretty much knows everybody in Glasgow, then he is going to be, or she is going to be, one of your biggest supporters. So understand that asking them for money might not be the right thing. It's asking them for access to their network, and that will be so important. And I think just remember that when you have an opportunity to speak about your organisation to any group, make sure that you do that with that energy, that passion, and that humility. And that 27 years down the line is sort of the perfect equation that I have come up with now, is that, you know, I can bring the energy. I hope you're agreeing. I can bring the passion because I'm very passionate about, yes, fundraising, but also about the organisations that I do work with. But I always have to be humble enough to say, I really want to do this. I know how to do it, but I can't do it without your help. And I think that that has been the key to success of most of the fundraising campaigns and organisations I've worked at, because people need to understand that there is a very big space for them at the table so that they can be welcomed in and they can be the ones that make the change that the organisation is trying to do, which obviously brings us back to having those good stories to tell. So I hope I did that in time, Frankie. I hope I didn't speak too fast. I'm Glaswegian. I hope
That
I
was
didn't speak too
perfect,
fast for
Anne.
everyone.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please. And finally, I'm really happy to hand over to Rob Cope. So Rob is Executive Director of Membership and Operations at the Chartered Institute of Fundraising. He's been key in supporting fundraising across the UK to do the work, and he'll be sharing his top 3 tips with us, pulled together from his insights over his years of experience. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Frankie. Morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. I really enjoyed listening to Anne and Caroline. So many of the points that they both raised really resonated, and I'm really fortunate in my role to have the opportunity to speak to hundreds and hundreds of charities a year. I'm also chair of my local citizens advice. And while it's just slightly outside the kind of the technically, you know, kind of what represents a small charity, so many of those issues are exactly the same. So many of the issues that I've been dealing with at board and talking to them, seeing the common issues, but also because I was the last speaker, I was able to read through all the chat, and it was fascinating to me. The common theme that I see that really struck a chord actually was something around a fundraising strategy, and which one I'm going to sort of touch on that before I go into my slides, because what I think when people hear fundraising strategy, it goes in the too difficult to do box. It goes in, I haven't got enough time. I don't know where to start, so I can't start fundraising. I hear that all the time, and it's human nature. And I think, as Anne might have said, alluded to, AI helps you massively, and also massive thanks as well to the colleague who shared the link. The Institute has templates on its own website for that, for small charities. It's all there, but before I go into the tips, I think there's a really important message I want to get across is don't let a fundraising strategy and that big thing over here get in the way of getting on with stuff, right? Because otherwise you won't get on with fundraising. And I've known Anne for a long time. She's an amazing communicator, relationship builder. And it's so true that the power you have as a small charity, even as of just a few of you, it's about building relationships and connections. And I just want to go back to something Caroline said earlier about finding the why. So the Chartered Institute, we know we've had our own challenges within our own organisation, as you may be aware. But what we did, and we launched it a couple of weeks ago, our fundraising convention, was went back to basics. And we said, what's our purpose? What is our primary purpose? Why are we here? And why do we do what we do want to do? And actually, I was speaking to a fundraising director at RNLI a few weeks ago, amazing fundraising director. She raised over £1 billion for charity. And she said, Rob, my fundraising strategy fits on a post-it note. What, a post-it note? Yeah. Every organization just needs a unifying moment to get together and understand what it is you're fundraising for and why you exist. So I ask everyone on this call today to find your post-it note and go and find it and see if you can write it down. Because if you can't tell that story, you're never going to be able to move on. And I think that so much of the brilliant tips that Caroline and Anne have sort of touched on so far resonate with me, someone who's able to speak to hundreds of charities a year about fundraising. It's the same issue, whether you're raising £100 million a year or £100,000 a year. The issues are the same. Fundraising strategy, yes. Develop it, think about it, yes. But don't let that stop you in terms of developing you as an organisation, because it doesn't need to. You need to think about the why and how you tell your story. So speaking of which, so I've got some tips here that I wanted to share with you. So we're going to the next slide. So these are all these things here. First thing I would say is focus on your quality over your quantity. And I hope that's reassuring as a small charity to hear that message, because what I observe is so many charities go, we need to do a fundraising strategy. We need to get some fundraising. We need to start that. And they may try and get some part-time support. Yes, that's fine. Or they may have someone on their board who's able to help or volunteer. But ultimately, what they see in terms of fundraising is we need to do a mass marketing campaign and we need to get like hundreds or thousands of people and we need to send loads of emails and loads of messages out to loads of people. No, you can't do it. A, because you haven't got the resource. B, you haven't got the people. And C, it's not effective. Okay, it's not effective. Focus on quality. Quality fundraising builds stronger, more sustainable relationships. Focus on the long-term sustainability. Focus on engaged donor base and focus on that longer-term consistent support. And remember, there are different ways for supporters to give. A donor may start just by giving a small cash gift, but don't see it in that way. It's a bit like Anne was saying earlier. Don't think about the immediate cash return. It's about what that relationship happens over time. Think about that person who gives a small cash gift may not have much money to give now, but in a few years' time, maybe they'll leave your gift to you in their will, and maybe their house or their estate might be worth a significant amount of money, and then maybe they might give you a small part of that, which would be amazing. So consider your charity's local connections, utilize those local relationships. And also, I'd say trusts and foundations, I think it's particularly difficult for charities at the moment, particularly smaller charities who've perhaps overly relied on trusts and foundations. What we're seeing is, even though it does offer amazing return on investment, there's increased competition for funds, so that's made it harder. So you have to think in different ways. But again, think about your why and think about building outwards. Think about that small kind of nucleus of your supporters, and then build out over time. Don't see this kind of big stretch target. It's too difficult to do. Okay. So higher impact means meaningful connections can lead to larger gifts. Again, it comes back to what Anne and what Caroline was saying earlier, and think about that. Also, this is a big thing. Even if you're dealing with 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 donors, you'll be amazed the difference of an improved donor experience. I was struck by a conversation I had yesterday by someone from a small charity who said that they were recipient of just a few gifts, and one of the donors stopped giving, and there were 10 charities they were giving to, and only one organisation wrote back and said, "I'm sorry, but this is the difference it's made over the last 10 years." And we just wanted to say, thank you. It was amazing. You made a difference. And that person said, wrote back to that one charity, said, "Do you know what? I've been given to 10 charities. You're the only one who stopped and said thank you. The only one who said the difference it's made. And I want to say that when I can, I'm going to just give to you, to your charity, and that's it." So donor experience is everything. And you'll be amazed the power of a small charity, building those relationships. You can offer that personal approach that maybe other organizations can't. So focus on what you're amazing at. Also focus on the right donors, focus on prioritizing quality fundraising, and aligning with those people who are truly passionate about your mission. What are you there to do? You know, the passion that came through from Caroline and Anne today is very, very clear. You know, if you can tap into that passion and build people around you, surround you with people who are passionate about it, that's a great thing. Okay, so next slide. So just to mix it up a bit, I just thought I'd give you a really quick case study. So this is Kath Abrams, who is a fantastic woman. Kath used to be a trustee at the Chartered Institute of Fundraising. She's a brilliant fundraiser. She's now a CEO of the charity Tommy's. And what I loved about this example that I just wanted to share with you was that what Kath did brilliantly was that she created a fundraising event that also had a wider impact on the organization. She created a walking challenge, so raised over a 6-figure sum, relatively low investment. But what she did was that she created, as part of the experience, was the conversations, the sense of community. And by enabling people within that community of support for Tommy's, other people were able to connect and talk during that walking challenge and support each other through, you know, conversations around pregnancy, and some of the challenges they have in terms of perhaps for those people who recently had babies. So there was a real sense of added value. And of course, it was great to see people, you know, in offering that support. So have a think about the way your organization can do something through fundraising that can be more meaningful and more impactful as a fundraising campaign that can serve both the charity and the community you serve. So I think this is a really nice example of just going, you know, do something that's going to raise money. Yes, you know, it has to work as a fundraising event, but it also can work in terms of serving you and build outwards from that kind of nucleus, really, of you know, of support to have a dual impact. I thought that was just a nice example. So on to the last slide. Communication again. I'll share that, you know, within my own charity systems advice, communication has been something that has come up a lot, and I suspect it's come up a lot for you and with you in your own organisations, because people talk a lot about fundraising, rightly so, because without fundraising, it's almost impossible to bridge that growing gap between increasing demand and the costs in doing business and opening the doors and being an organisation. It's very, very challenging, and fundraising has to find a way to bridge that gap. And even more difficult if you're a small organisation with very few resources. But I would say behind this is communication, and I think, you know, Anne touched on this earlier brilliantly when she talks about storytelling and about being able to tell your narrative. And again, it comes through so brilliantly with Caroline's presentation, that if you can't tell your story, if you can't say why you exist, what you're here to do, and if you can't regularly tell your story to other people, even if it's, let's say, 10 people who are regular donors, and there'll be outside of that, there'll be a wider group, a halo of wider people who perhaps are aware of your organization, or friends and family, people who currently support it. If you can't tell your story in a coherent way, then you're not going to be able to build fundraising into your organization, because you can't communicate and bring people with you on that journey. That's what you're doing as a small charity. You're bringing people and filling that gap of solving a problem. So stay in the problem and communicate how you're solving that problem So that's my biggest thing. Write that down. You're solving a problem, where and stay in the problem. That's absolutely where you need to be. So focus on clear, consistent messaging, personalized communication, and engaging stories that resonate with your audience. Start small, tell your stories regularly, and build outwards. They need to be clear, they need to be compelling. Share your charity's mission, your vision. It doesn't need to be a 20-page document. Better if it's not. You know, Jane George from Hour and a Lie. Does it fit on a post-it note? Understand those types of things. But also within it, you can do personalized communication, tailor your messages to different audiences. For example, you know, I noticed that many organizations now are using LinkedIn newsletters, for example, just to be able to do that. You might have a very different audience on LinkedIn than, for example, if you have a group on Facebook. Facebook, it's more, you can do more visual case studies, some examples, and grab people's attention that way. Whereas LinkedIn, you might be able to build as a way of building your network and thinking about from a professional point of view, what are the skills and gaps that you can fill as perhaps from your trustee positions that you can bring people with you on that journey. So think about that and think about the communication and personalize your communication. Also, if people obviously, if donors express particular interest in certain areas, let's say, for example, geographically in a very specific postcode, let's say, you might be able to then tailor that a bit further. And with a smaller organization, you might be able to do that in a way that larger organizations simply can't. Tell stories. Stories are at the heart of what you need to do. Changing hearts and minds, it isn't done rationally, it's done emotionally, it's done through stories. Communication and fundraising, they go together. And so think about that. You will have those stories. Tell them. They don't have to be long, but do that in a compelling way and talk about the difference you've made. Stay in the problem, tell the story about how you're solving that problem through stories. Regular updates and thank yous. I said that earlier. You'd be amazed how many people don't do it. Most people don't do it. So if you're a small charity that's doing regular updates and thank yous, you're probably in the top 1%, and you're probably over time going to be well ahead in terms of your competitors. So do it. You'll be amazed how few people do it. And if you're already doing it, make sure that other people within the organization regularly feed into that and understand what an amazing asset that is to the organization, and make that a priority. Multi-channel approach, as I said, you know, email is really powerful. It's a really powerful tool, so use it. Be able to to tell that story. We in my own organization, we use emails, campaigns in a really effective way, and we've built it over time. Social media, similarly, think about the different channels and what they do as part of that. And I would just say, and these two things go together as a final point, is what you can do with on a very limited budget. I've done this. Is you could, let's say you have 5 or 6 stories to tell. What you can do is you can tell those stories on Facebook. So you can build a Facebook community. You can tell those stories. Look to see which ones resonate. Look to see which ones get the most engagement, and then learn from that. And then perhaps you can think, right, we're going to do more of those types of things. Was it the image that was more powerful? Was it because it was in the first person? Was it because the copy was quite short? Test and learn from that. A few years ago through Remember Charity Week, I created a suite of 16 different ads. It was the same picture, but just different wording. One worked better than the others. So we put a very small budget, about £100 behind that one post. And it got thousands and thousands and thousands of piece of engagement. So you can do clever things on really small budget if you're smart about looking about what things work and what things don't work. And as a small charity, even if you're not very well resourced, actually you can do that just on a smaller scale, and you'll be amazed how more efficient and effective that will be. You'll be amazed how much that can accelerate your fundraising, and you'll be amazed how much further effective you'll be in the long run in terms of growing your fundraising. So they are my tips, and I'll hand back to Frankie. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. So before we move on to questions, I can see that there are lots of you wanting to connect with each other and swapping emails in the chat. Firstly, please do feel free to connect with each other on LinkedIn. Alternatively, if you are a member and would like to connect to someone in this group, the team can connect you in a GDPR compliant way. We just ask that you email membership@ncbo.org.uk and we can arrange that for you. So now we're going to move into the Q&A part of the session. We've got about 25 minutes for questions. If you haven't done so already, please do use the Q&A function to pop your questions in there. You can find that at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You can also upvote questions that others have asked if there's something you particularly like to hear answered, and that will kind of help us prioritize. And we will try and get through as many as we can, but if we don't get through them all, we will send the answers with the follow-up email or after the follow-up email. So we will make sure all questions do get answered. So moving on to the questions. The first question I have is for Anne. We've had a couple of questions on this. It's distinguishing between your fundraising strategy, your business plan, and your organization's strategic plan. Can you distinguish between these and clarify where they overlap with each other?
So tell me the three things again. Sorry, I was making sure I was all familiar.
The fundraising strategy, the business plan, and the organization's strategic plan. Can you distinguish between them and clarify where they might overlap?
Yeah, so I suppose the organisational strategy will be about and I was interested to answer because Rob was talking about the problem, and lots of people are saying in the chat there, what is the problem? The problem is your cause, obviously. So it's, that's why you exist, in order to solve a problem in society. So I would say your strategy is all focused about that. So it's, how are we going to do this? Okay, what is the steps we're going to take, and what is the impact we're going to have, and the change we are going to make in society? So, or for those who use our services, right? So that is what you're geared to, whether that's a 3-year, a 5-year strategic direction that you're wanting to take to reach a goal. Your business plan is how you're going to make that happen. So it's not like the overarching, the strategy maybe is more related to what it is we want to do and why. The business plan, which I would say isn't always separated within organisations, but maybe it is for some people on the call. The business plan is, how are you going to make that happen? So what are the steps you have to take? So perhaps it's, we have to hire a person that can facilitate the workshops that we're going to be doing for the people. And the business plan also has to include the place that we're going to do that in, and is it compliant to what we need it to be? So that is the business plan. The fundraising strategy is, how are we going to have the money in the bank to do everything we want to do? So that is how I would distinguish between the three of those. And the fundraising plan, for me, is a very proud fundraiser, is the most important part, because you can have the best strategy in the world as to how you're going to change lives of people that you work with. Unless you understand how you're going to make the money, then it's just an idea. And I think that is the difference. Fundraising takes an idea and turns it into a reality. So that's how I would be distinguishing those three.
Thanks, Anne. And another question for you. Are funders and supporters essentially the same?
I think I would say it depends, because, and it's so interesting. I was having a call, because obviously I'm freelance, I'm also having calls about pieces of work earlier with somebody, and we were talking about that real distinction between restricted and unrestricted income. Also the variety. So as a fundraiser, I am not a fundraising expert in everything that fundraisers do. I can't do legacies and trusts and high value, and corporate and community. That isn't one person. I can do quite a lot of those things because I've been around the block a few times. But I think funders as such, it depends how you define funders. When you say funder, to me, I'm thinking of trusts and foundations. So I'm thinking of the Robertson Trust or the National Lottery, or I'm thinking of funders who you will apply to. I think now, when I first started out, I would say that felt very distant, and it was somebody who was very good at sitting at a keyboard and writing compelling stories and putting the impact and everything across, which wasn't what I did, because I was much better out with people and, you know, engaging with people. So I would say that has changed, that has blurred now, and that actually there is a much bigger demand now for us to get to know our funders in a really compelling way, and making sure that we apply at the right time, and you know, for the right pot of money. But supporters can be anyone. And there's an interesting stat, which I have to say, I have quoted this about 5 times in the last week alone, and I actually don't even remember what the stat is. So I'm giving you a stat that might be wrong, but I once heard, and it was perhaps it's something the Chartered Institute of Fundraising were doing. So maybe Rob would know, not to put you in the spot, Rob, that to get money from someone who already supports you is 80% easier than finding a new donor, finding a new supporter. So understanding that your supporters are not people in isolation who can maybe, yeah, only afford to give you £10 every now and again, but they don't sit in isolation. They have families, they have cousins, they have work colleagues, they have friends, you know, they have a huge big network. And as a supporter, how they support you could be very different, but could be equally as profitable or as fundamental to your organisation. It's who they could introduce you to. So often, as the example I gave earlier, is if you've got a supporter who really loves your work and is telling the story of your work everywhere, I would say they're just as valuable. So I would put a different emphasis on a funder, if I'm getting the definition right, as being a trust or foundation, than somebody who is just a person who supports your work, either because you've helped them or because you've helped someone they love, or just because they like the cause that you've got. So.
Thank you. So over to Caroline. We find it easier to get grants for specific projects, and so often use our more general fundraising to help cover core costs. Do you have any top tips on ensuring we're being open and transparent on how the funds will be used while still appealing?
Yes, I mean, one of the things that we find here is that because one of the things we're really good at is storytelling, but we don't ask people to raise money for us. We always talk about the impact of our fundraise, of our work and our charity. Our social media is full of case studies and the things that we're doing. And as a consequence, we get more and more people raising money. So I think what we do, we have a really basic impact report, a one-pager, which shows the income coming in and what we're doing with the money and how we break that down. So we're transparent about how the money is being spent. But we're also very, very open that we need funds to turn the lights on, and we need funds to do our core of our work. So I think actually it's saying in a really clear, it costs us this much to run our charity, to deliver this work, and this is the outcome of this work. And I think if people can see that, then they're quite happy with it. I think trust fundraising is changing as well. So this very specific projects that it used to be very much like you raise money for this particular project. Some of that is changing now. And I think what we have to do as a sector is be really clear that we need core funds to spend it to make the difference to the people we're here to serve, without being too prescriptive. And I think funders respect that. Does that answer what the person wanted?
Thank you, Caroline. Yes, I think so. Next question is for Anne. What are your key tips on gaining corporate fundraising? What do corporates tend to find desirable in a partnership?
Yeah, so I'm off mute, yeah. So I think, and this is something that I say all of the time, Rob's heard me say this multiple times, people buy people, let's not forget that. So people are going to buy me every day of the week before they're going to buy what it is that I'm selling to them. And so instead of thinking about how do I get this corporate to engage with my work, you need to start doing research on corporates who have an area of synergy with your organisation. So if you think of two circles overlapping, the corporate's on one side, I'm on the other side, is there an area of synergy is the first question. Because if there is not an area of synergy between them and you, then there is probably no point in researching that any further and taking that any further. So what I mean by an area of synergy can be that their corporate social responsibility, if they've got one, that policy that will sit somewhere on their website, that will tell you what that is that they see as their priorities. What do they see that they want to contribute to those who support their business? If there's an area of synergy in there, then 100% you've got that. There's also one, do they want the audience you've got? And this is probably the really big sell here, is do they want your audience? So if you're a charity who works exclusively with young women between the age of 16 and 24, who else wants that audience? You know, lots of people want that audience. And therefore, you now have an area of synergy with them because they might want to associate themselves with you so that they can reach the audience that they want to get to. Frankie, going to repeat the question. Sorry, I'm forgetting what I was dove in there and I can't even remember if I'm answering it.
Not a problem at all. It was, what are your key tips on gaining corporate fundraising,
Yeah.
and what do corporates tend to find desirable?
So people, I would say if you want to gain corporates, do some research, start attending networking events. When you attend those networking events, again, you're not there to sell your organisation over a coffee because that probably won't work. You're there to strike up a really good and compelling conversation so that later on, so that's what I would often do. I would just get on really well with someone. I would be engaging in the conversation so that by the time I email them a few days later and say, could I meet you for a coffee? They actually want to meet me for a coffee, and then I can talk to them about my organisation. I get that that's something that, you know, not everybody is as happy to do as me, but that's what really works for me. And it's building your way, you know, do your research. Is this a corporate that, if you're looking on social media and local newspapers, if they exist anymore, is there a corporate that you keep seeing that's doing things for charity? Find organisations that are really engaged with doing stuff for charity and approach them because they are the ones. See what their process is. How did they choose their last charity? All of this is sitting at a desk to find out. But ultimately, it's going to have to be you face to face with the person before you start to make it. And I think a top tip here would be that you, small, medium organisations, you will get to the decision maker much quicker than larger organisations. In a larger organisation, it's so hard to get to the decision maker that you might never get there and you could waste an awful lot of time trying. So don't lose sight of, I remember having a conversation and starting a partnership with an insurance brokerage in Glasgow, and they had 5 premises. So, you know, they weren't the high. I got to their decision maker, their MD, very, very quickly. She became a corporate partner, and that was the first time they had ever chosen a charity. And now they're very charitable because I watched that. And I think in that first year, they raised over £45,000 for me in different things. So, you know, they had never given to charity. I had struck up a really good rapport with the business owner, and she was like, tell me a bit more. And what I sold to them was how good this could be for your business, how good it could be for your staff to feel as if they come to work. You know, we're lucky we come to work for a good cause. I have every day of my professional life. People who work in other organisations don't have that feeling of they've contributed perhaps to the bigger picture of society. We can give that to organisations. We can make people feel as if it's about more than just sitting at a desk and that they are contributing to something bigger. So hopefully that's enough info in there. That's all right, Frank.
That's perfect. Thank you. Question for Rob. Are there generic templates of a fundraising strategy to use as a base and to amend to make it relevant to your charity?
Are the templates? I didn't catch the middle bit of that question. Say it again, Frankie.
Are there any generic templates of a fundraising strategy that people can use as a base and that they can amend to make it relevant?
Yeah, so I think on the Institute's website we've got the template. You can download a template. So if you want, as a small charity, you can join the Institute for free. It's something we did in conversation with NTVO a few years ago, because NTVO had been doing that, and we decided to do the same. And as part of that, because I sort of recognised the challenges of a small charity, so we changed it. And so as part of that, if you become part of the membership, you can get all the kind of templates, and you can download it and then just change it as you want. It's all there for free. And also, obviously, something we haven't really touched on much, but you can use AI to be able to develop it as well, which sounds difficult, but it's actually very easy these days, in terms of developing something that will be fit for purpose to get you going. And that's the key thing. Again, what I don't want people to do to come away from this is to think, I need to write a fundraising strategy. It's going to take me a year, and then it never gets ready, but I haven't got the staff, so I just can't get around to it, and it goes into the too difficult to do box. No, 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 let's not do that. Let's get going. And so yeah, there are, as part of that, templates to be able to give you a structure. There's a conversation you can use within your organization.
Thanks, Rob. And a couple more questions around resources for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on places to look to find good fundraising consultants who might be able to help in building fundraising capacity?
Oh, that's a great question. The problem when you say, "Do I have anywhere to whatever you give?" Uh, people go, "Well, I'm not part of that network," and it becomes more difficult. And then, yeah, people who are inside the camp or outside the camp then kind of become a bit conflicted about it. So what I would say is, we do within the Institute's network. So if you're a member, I mean, there are other networks and spaces available. But I'm just talking in terms of what I've got authority in terms of the Chartered Institute of Fundraising. We have loads of great organisations who are corporate members. So you're within the ecosystem of the Institute. You can speak to them, and we have a directory there of people that you can contact as consultants. And obviously as well, you can put notes out, do things like, another option is to do something like through Facebook's fundraising chat. That's also another good option to ask for connections, and obviously LinkedIn as well. But yeah, so within those three areas, they were probably the areas of focus that I would probably particularly lean into. But there are many, many others out there as well.
And a final question on resource for you, Rob. Do you have any suggestions for resources in Scotland for a grant-making organisation?
Yeah. Anne, are you able? You might be better equipped to answer that question than me. Say if not, but
No, I think I don't really understand. I need a wee bit more detail. What do they're looking for resources for a grant making?
Yeah, so it's a grant-making foundation, so they're looking for resources.
So they are a grant making foundation.
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm actually not clear on what it is that question's asking, but certainly get in touch with me, and I can come back. I am based in Glasgow, in case anyone didn't get that. So yes, I'm very based in Scotland, and we've got a CIOF Scotland committee as well. So and we've got our conference actually coming up in Scotland in September too. If there's anyone in Scotland that wants to come along to that, I'm sure they could get tickets on the CIOF website too.
yeah, actually, and that's a great point. On resources, I think the other thing to say is, a smaller charity, is that if you're a member of the Institute, what you can do is just join one of the local groups. We have 36 different groups, so special interest groups and areas. So that would, for example, if you wanted to do something on legacies, we've got a legacy SIG special interest group. We've got groups on major donors, so you could ask them about if you've got a specific question on major donors. Again, if you're part of as a small charity, you can join the Institute for free and then just approach and connecting with all those different groups. It's a great way of networking. And as Anne said, yeah, we do have an amazing group up in Scotland, so you could definitely talk to them as well. So thanks, Anne, for that nudge as well.
Thank you both for answering that question. Now over to Caroline. A few people have mentioned they work for charities that operate in sensitive areas, for example, suicide loss. Do you have any tips for attracting funds for these type of organisations and tips on developing business partnerships for organisations working in sensitive spaces?
Yes, I used to be the fundraising manager for the Rape and Sexual Abuse Support Centre. So we did this quite a bit. And even at Harry's Hat, the thought for parents of having children with life-threatening conditions is really sensitive. If you're approaching corporates, for example, when I used to work for a rape charity, we use statistics. So we look at, how many people in that organisation is likely to be affected. And that can help you get your foot in the door. So if suicide is a sensitive subject, but you will have, as an organisation, statistics around the incidence of suicide and the incidence of people that you're supporting, if you can link that to how many people are in the organisation, then you can show how that's going to directly affect and touch them. So, for example, where we are here, hydrocephalus affects 1 in every 770 babies who will be born with it. If I'm trying to reach out, say, to a school, I look at how many children are at the school. And even if you're saying one child in the school is likely to be affected, suddenly you've got that connection and it gives you a foot in the door. Again, it's all about the storytelling. So, if we're trying to make a connection with a business, if, say, I was talking about rape and sexual abuse, we would look at the incidence of rape and sexual abuse, look at the amount of people in that organisation, but then we'd also, within our pitch to get involved, we'd give some first-person lived experience case studies, because then it brings it to life. And then it makes that problem their problem as well. So it's showing them how it will touch them.
Thanks, Caroline. So we've probably only got time for one, maybe two more questions. Rob, question for you. You've mentioned AI a couple of times. I can see there could be big benefits for time saving, but aren't there risks around this, e.g. funders running applications through AI checks? Would this be frowned upon?
Yeah, I mean, are there risks? Yes, there are risks. You always have to kind of balance the risks. But the reality is that it's already here and everyone is using it. And I think I would see AI as a good starting point to accelerate your work. It's a small charity, you don't have an awful lot of time, you don't have a lot of resource. So it's a bit like how remember when digital kind of really kind of took off and it started to become a real level playing field. It became a level playing field because it was able to, you were able to communicate in a much more cost-effective way that in a way that just wasn't possible. AI is the same in a way, in that you can create videos, tell your story. I was talking about earlier about communicating and about telling stories. You can create videos and content and images using AI. Now you may say, well, okay, is that ethical? Well, the reality is that it, you have to do it in the right way. And actually, there's a big section again on the Institute's website about AI. There's loads of great stuff on there about it. But I'd say just don't be afraid of it. Use it as a starting point, and then use your human touch, your intervention to be able to think that's a good starting point. It's got me much further on in my fundraising strategy. It's got me much further on in terms of my communications. It's honed and improved my messaging. It's been able to reframe something I was struggling to say, in a way that now is perhaps a little bit more coherent. That is why wouldn't you use it? So are there risks? Yes, but I think that of course the risk in everything. There's risk in asking colleagues and they give you bad advice, right? Of course, it's a starting point to accelerate your work. Just see it like that is what I would say.
Thanks, Rob. that's probably all the questions for now, because we're going to go a little bit rogue because Anne has a final tip that she would like to share.
Colleagues have been speaking, I've been reading the questions coming up, and some things have just come up for me that I should have said that. I was just trying to answer in the questions there, but couldn't work out how to. Someone asked me where you go to network, so I'll start with that one. Google it. Networking events in your area. Chambers of Commerce are usually quite good, but just Google networking events in your area and start attending them. They will be free or have a low fee. And remember, please remember, when you're there, people buy you before they buy what you're selling them. So it's about you creating meaningful conversations. And that's what you need to do there. Then my other top tip, and it was actually came to me, and I was frantically messaging Frankie when Caroline was speaking earlier. And there used to be a book that's no longer, back when you bought books about fundraising. It's no longer in print, and it was called Getting to the Ask. And it's such an important thing that you get to the ask, because you could have a supporter who really loves the work you're doing, is so impressed by the work you're doing, but because you don't ask them for money, they don't realise that you need it. And someone like me comes along behind you and I ask, and so I get it, even though they're not as passionate about my cause as they are about yours. So make sure that you get to the ask, and make sure you're asking the right person for the right thing at the right time. I use, and I don't know how many you're in England, but the major philanthropist in Scotland, Sir Tom Hunter, I do a lot of work with his organisation as well. And I often say to people, if you sat down next to Tom Hunter on a train, you could sit and tell him about your cause, not knowing who he is, and ask him for £50 and he'll give you it. But he could have also gave you 5 million if you had got the conversation going in the right way. So make sure you understand who you're speaking to, what their propensity to give is, and make sure that you actually ask for it. Because too many people, and I think in fundraising and in charity, think, well, they must know that we need money, so when they've got some, they'll give it to us. They don't know if you don't tell them.
Thank you so much. That's a really, really good tip. Next slide, please. So before we signpost you to further tools and resources, we're going to do a snap poll, which will appear on your screen, just to get your initial thoughts on how you found today's webinar. And if you can spare a few minutes, there will also be a short feedback form appearing in your browser when you leave today's webinar. We'd love to know what you enjoyed or valued, and where could we make improvements. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to fill in that feedback poll, and then we will move on to some resources to help you with your fundraising strategy. Like I say, it should just be some quick questions to help you to give us some feedback on how you found today. And if we could move to the next slide, please. So before we wrap up, just a bonus tip, which is do not reinvent the wheel. There's already a lot of support out there to help you develop or improve your fundraising strategy. So really do make the most of what's out there. We will include all the links to the resources in the follow-up email, but just a really quick overview of what is available for you. We've got fundraising guidance, including tools like a fundraising income planner for anyone who's an NCVO member. You'll also find guidance on applying for grants and exploring different fundraising methods. So there's a multitude of fundraising methods on our website. Please do hop on and have a look. We also offer bid writing training, which can be especially useful if you're applying to trusts or foundations. As Rob has mentioned, the Chartered Institute of Fundraising also has a really helpful bank of guidance for small charities, including that template fundraising strategy. So it really is well worth exploring. Also, don't forget our small charity help desk is open Monday to Friday, 10 till 4 p.m. And we can give guidance on anything from governance to fundraising. So please do make use of that. It's also important to check in with the fundraising regulator, especially if you're doing fundraising from the public. They've got some clear and accessible guidance on what good practice looks like, And also, if you hop on over to our YouTube channel, there is a previous webinar that we ran with the Code of Fundraising, with the fundraising regulator on the changes to the Code of Fundraising practice. So do have a look at that as well. And just that reminder that we will be launching some new training that goes deeper into creating a fundraising strategy. There is some already on our website, and this will build on today's session and offer you more detailed support. So please do have a look on our website for that. Next slide, please. Before we wrap up, I just want to flag 2 upcoming webinars that might be really valuable for you or your teams. The first up is on Wednesday, the 23rd of July from 10 o'clock. We're running a free webinar on how to protect against and prepare for a terrorist incident. This session is ideal if your charity hosts events in venues or public spaces and you want to understand the simple steps you can take to improve safety. It's delivered in partnership with the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, so you'll be hearing directly from national experts on the latest threats, what a good risk assessment looks like, and practical proportionate actions that you can take as an organisation. It is open to everyone. It might be particularly relevant for you if you're a chief exec, trustee, operation manager, a fundraiser who's organising events. That session won't be recorded, so do book on and attend live. You can find more details on our website or by using the QR code. And secondly, we've got another webinar coming up soon on how to handle volunteer concerns. That session will cover how to approach difficult conversations with volunteers, common issues that can arise, and how to resolve them in a fair and supportive way. If you're involved in volunteer management or support, this one's well worth catching. That one will be on our website shortly. It's not on there yet, but it will be shortly. So again, please do keep an eye on our website for details of all the upcoming webinars. And that brings us to the end of today's session. So just a few final things before we wrap up. Firstly, just a huge, huge thank you to our speakers, Rob, Anne, and Caroline, for generously sharing their insights and their experience. And of course, thank you to all of you for joining and contributing your thoughts and questions throughout the session. If your question hasn't been answered, we will make sure that it is answered and send it out with the follow-up. Before you go, we would really appreciate if you could fill out the short Zoom survey that will pop up when the webinar ends. It should only take you a couple of minutes and it really helps us to improve future sessions. And finally, if you're not already a member of NCVO, I'd really encourage you to take a look, especially while we're offering the 50% discount for small charities. You can scan the QR code on the screen now or visit our website to find out more. Thank you again for being part of the session, and we really hope to see you at another event soon.